If you forget people's names easily, it's not because you're bad with memory. That's the excuse you tell yourself. The polite explanation. The socially acceptable lie. The truth is more uncomfortable. You remember faces with no effort. You remember where you met them. You remember what they said, how they laughed, even how they made you feel. But the name? Gone. And that's not random. Because names are not neutral information. A name is recognition. It's an admission that this person matters enough to exist clearly in your mind. When a name doesn't stick, it's often because some part of you doesn't want it to. Not consciously, not deliberately, but psychologically. Your mind doesn't forget what it finds important. It filters. It prioritizes. It protects. So when names slip away again and again, it's not a memory failure. It's a subtle act of avoidance. Avoidance of connection. Avoidance of exposure. Avoidance of being fully seen by another human being who now has a place in your inner world. This isn't about intelligence. It's about defense. And the moment you stop calling it bad memory, you start seeing what's actually happening underneath. It usually happens in the most ordinary moments. You meet someone at work, at a gathering, through a friend. You shake hands. You smile. You hear their name clearly. And for a moment, you think, I've got it. Days later, you see them again. Your body recognizes them instantly. Your mind recalls the conversation. You remember what they do, where they're from, maybe even something personal they shared. But when it's time to say their name, there's a pause, a blank space. You hesitate. Your chest tightens just slightly. You avoid saying it altogether. Hey, you. You laugh it off. You blame stress. You tell yourself you're just bad with names. And no one calls you out. Because this happens to everyone. But what's strange is this. You don't forget everything. Faces stay. Details stay. Emotions stay. Only the name disappears. And deep down, there's a quiet discomfort you don't talk about. A feeling that if you said their name out loud, something would shift. Because names collapse distance. They turn someone into someone specific. And something in you keeps choosing distance. Carl Jung believed the mind is not a neutral recorder of reality. It's selective, intentional, symbolic. We remember what carries psychological weight, not what is merely presented to us. A name, in Jungian terms, is not just a label. It's a symbol of identity. To know someone's name is to recognize them as a distinct psychological presence, not just a background figure in your life. Your psyche treats that recognition seriously. Jung observed that forgetting is rarely accidental. When something disappears from conscious memory, it often hasn't vanished. It's been pushed aside because it threatens balance. Names demand engagement. They pull a person out of the crowd and place them in relation to you. And the unconscious doesn't do that lightly. If your mind senses vulnerability, judgment, expectation, or emotional exposure, it may quietly disengage. Not by panicking. Not by rejecting. But by forgetting. This is why you can remember a face yet lose the name. The face is visual. The name is relational. According to Jung, what the psyche avoids is often more revealing than what it remembers. Because avoidance is a form of communication. So when names fail to stick, the question isn't, what's wrong with my memory? It's, what does my psyche not want to acknowledge? That's where the real meaning begins. Names represent something deeper than sound. They represent individual recognition. When you remember someone's name, you're unconsciously saying, I see you as a distinct person, separate from me. And that's exactly where the tension begins. For many people, forgetting names is a way to keep emotional distance without appearing cold. It's subtle, socially acceptable, even accidental looking. But underneath, it often protects the ego. If you struggle with intimacy, names can feel like a doorway. Once you say someone's name, the interaction becomes personal. And personal means exposed. For others, it's social anxiety wearing a calm mask. By keeping names fuzzy, you avoid the risk of getting them wrong. And the judgment that follows. There's also a quieter, more uncomfortable defense: superiority. Not arrogance in the obvious sense, but an unconscious ranking. If the psyche decides someone isn't significant enough, it won't allocate memory to them. Not because they lack value, but because recognizing them fully would challenge how you see yourself. This is where the shadow steps in. The shadow avoids what threatens the ego's control. Names threaten neutrality. They force recognition. So the mind chooses distance and calls it forgetfulness. In Jungian psychology, the shadow isn't evil. It's protective. It forms around the parts of you that feel unsafe to express: fear, insecurity, need, vulnerability. And forgetting names is one of the shadow's quiet strategies, because names make people real. When someone remains nameless in your mind, they stay abstract. And abstract people can't judge you. They can't expect anything from you. They can't get close enough to see your weaknesses. The shadow understands this instinctively. By not remembering names, it keeps interactions shallow, controlled, low risk. You can move through social spaces without fully committing, without being truly seen, without risking rejection or exposure. But there's a cost. Each forgotten name reinforces a hidden belief. Connection is dangerous. Recognition is a threat. Distance is safer than closeness. And over time, this pattern doesn't stay small. It spreads. You begin to keep people at arm's length emotionally, not just socially. You avoid depth without realizing it. You protect yourself from pain and from intimacy at the same time. The shadow thinks it's helping you survive. But what it's really doing is keeping you alone. At first, forgetting names feels harmless. A small social flaw. An awkward moment you laugh off and move past. But patterns never stay small. When names don't stick, connections don't either. People sense it, even if they can't explain why. They feel slightly unseen, slightly interchangeable. And slowly, relationships flatten. You have conversations, but not bonds. Interactions, but not closeness. Familiarity, but not trust. Over time, the same situations repeat. You meet people. You drift. You lose touch. Not because of conflict, but because nothing ever deepened enough to hold. This creates a quiet kind of loneliness. Not dramatic, not obvious, just the sense that you're surrounded by people, yet rarely known by them. The shadow tells you this is safer, less risk, less disappointment, but safety comes at a price. Without recognition, there's no reciprocity. Without naming, there's no anchoring. And without anchoring, relationships remain temporary. What started as "I'm bad with names" becomes a life pattern. Shallow connections, missed intimacy, and the feeling that something meaningful keeps slipping away, without ever knowing exactly why. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Awareness doesn't erase the shadow instantly. Not even close. Patterns that have quietly shaped your behavior for years don't vanish with a single realization. But noticing them is the first crack in the armor. When you pause and ask yourself, why do I forget this person's name? Something subtle shifts. Your mind can no longer hide behind unconscious avoidance. Suddenly, you recognize the pattern. It's not memory. It's fear. It's defense. It's distance masquerading as carelessness. And the shadow, once in full control, loses some of its power the moment it is observed. This is the secret of transformation. Recognition. Not punishment. Not shame. Recognition. Every name you deliberately remember becomes a tiny act of courage. Every time you push past the unconscious resistance, You reclaim connection. You prove to your psyche that closeness is safe, that recognition isn't threat. It doesn't happen perfectly. It doesn't happen overnight. But each moment of awareness weakens the old pattern. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the distance begins to shrink. The first step isn't memorizing names. It's seeing why you forgot them. So, what do you do with this realization? You can't erase the past. You can't undo the names you've forgotten, the moments you've kept abstract, the people you let drift away. But you can start noticing. You can pay attention. You can give presence where you previously gave absence. Every name you remember becomes more than a word. It becomes recognition. It becomes connection. It becomes a conscious choice to see someone fully. And when you start doing this, something unexpected happens. The shadow begins to loosen its grip. The fear of closeness, the avoidance, the protective distance, they start to feel unnecessary. Because awareness shines a light where the unconscious once ruled. Ask yourself this question. Who am I refusing to recognize? Not just in names, but in life, in love, in friendships, in myself. The answer is rarely comfortable. But it's always revealing. Memory wasn't the problem. Avoidance was. And the moment you see it, even a little, you reclaim choice. You reclaim presence. You reclaim humanity. And maybe, just maybe, you start to remember what matters most, before it slips away again.